All right, so I got on your radar and you got on my radar thanks to Derek Tyler Attico, who is a fantastic human being. I got to meet him in person at Shore Leave, which
Nice.
was a big event for me. Which, of course, with authors, it's a many to one relationship where, like, oh hey, he was the only author that I talked to that minute or whatever. Whereas like he had a line of people after every panel that he did of like it was
Yeah.
30, 40 people deep, wanting to either talk to him, buy a book from him, like any of those things.
He's
And
a
i
man good
i, I
now.
want to say he was the bell of the ball at Shore Leave,
Nice. He
which I
deserves it.
thought was like, yeah, I thought it was a big deal at Shore Leave. And then the guys out there posting pictures of Star Trek New Vegas or Las Vegas, and he's meeting a lot more people out there. It's a much bigger show.
The Star
Now
Trek.
he's off to Glasgow. Like he's doing some jet setting.
Yeah, and what's nice about where he's at, the Star Trek community is really tight, which is really nice. And so he's at that next level threshold, which is really cool. I mean, he's the
Yeah,
greatest guy and he deserves it. So it's really
yeah.
cool. Mm,
So on the topic though, he got his start on a the Strange New Worlds contest, which they're
correct.
not doing anymore. So there's no more new author entries that way.
Hmm.
But now Titan Publishing is doing short stories in their magazines,
Hmm.
and that's how you got into the Star Trek publishing world.
Yeah.
Um, with your first story, which was in Explorer 11, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. And it'll also be in um the October release. I'm trying to remember the title right now.
Yeah,
Give me a
can you
second.
get the title? Because I
Yeah,
I know it,
I'll get it.
but
Hold on one
it's one of
second.
those titles that's like it's a huge screen worth of.
Yeah, hold on. Let me get it real quick.
Yeah.
It will be a year to the day that I saw myself die and other stories. It's long.
Yes. Yeah. The for how many stories they fit into those books, they're the format is interesting. Oh, look at that, a puppy. We are very pet friendly around here. Have you seen the hardcovers that they've released in the past for the other collections?
The Strange New Worlds?
No, for Explorer.
No, no. This is I've seen them advertised, but I've never touched one myself.
Right. So they're I'm trying to see if I have anything like about their size. They're tall. They're very tall, very wide books, but they're kind of thin because like the words are just like spread out in a different way.
Hmm.
But they're going to look good after you have like a couple years worth of collections up on the
Mm,
wall.
cool.
Um, but yeah, the other ones have come and gone. They're all been very good. This next one is coming out in October, I want to say.
October 1st.
Yeah, October 1st. So
They
that's
may have
coming up
changed it
quick.
to they may have changed it to no, October. Well, December 16th, all of a sudden it says free delivery. I wonder if they pushed it back. Originally it was
Amazon is
October
saying
1st.
December 10th now. Hmm.
Yeah, they moved it back by 2 months.
Well,
I'm used to that.
not yeah. That's the publishing world, especially in our post-pandemic
Hmm.
world that we're living in, where just random things have a shortage, and you're
Yeah.
like, was this an actual shortage, a manufacturer shortage, or like a meme shortage?
Yeah,
Because
plus Titan Publishing had some changes, but they're belated changes in their editor. John Freeman, I don't know if you know him or not, but he's the editor for Titan Publishing, like Star Trek Explorer magazine. He was supposed to be gone like 2 months ago, and now he's like they've extended him. So it seems like they're having some internal stuff
yeah, kind
there.
of like a Disney situation where Bob was supposed to leave to be replaced by another Bob, and then Bob the first came back.
Right.
Yeah, that might explain what's going on with all their social media stuff and their publication on their own website.
Yeah, and you met Jim
Because
Johnson too, because the same thing's happening in Modifius too. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, it's a wild west in the publishing world right now, which is it is what it is, right? Like
Hmm.
everyone's trying their best, but things being what they are, you just do your best.
Well, the
They really
landscape's
do.
changing so much of how people consume media is what it is, and people are trying to keep up with it. Like all
Yeah,
of a sudden, people think books are dead, and then all of a sudden you have this collector market show up that's like books are not dead, and PDFs are doing worse in sales than physical. It's really interesting. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And then on top of all that is the new wave of audiobook appreciation.
Yeah.
that my wife consumes. It's probably like a 50-50
Hmm.
of like audiobooks and books, and she'll sometimes read the book at night and then listen to the book on her drive to work, and just have to like flip through and find where she's at. And I'm not sure
I
if I'd
can't
be
do
able to
that.
do
I
that.
can't
Yeah,
do that. I'm 50-50 audiobook too, but
right.
definitely I can't bounce back and forth between mediums. I commit to one. I always have one hard copy, I always have one Kindle, and I always have one Audible always going. Or
Right.
Libby. I don't know if you use Libby app or not. It's free.
Yeah, that's the one that's hooked into local libraries, right?
Which is
Yeah,
really cool. And you can hook up wherever you want. So I do San Francisco because of course it has like the biggest library.
right. Yeah, there's several libraries over in Jacksonville. Speaking of Jacksonville, one of which you have to pay to be a member of,
Mm,
which my sister does. So we share library cards for that center. And then another one that is free for taxpayers, but they don't check. So they're just like,
okay.
well, it's free for anyone that wants to read a book. Like they're okay with like people that want to read.
Cool.
Those librarians, they're pretty good. So what's the story that you've got coming out, or it's already been released in the magazine form, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So
So
what's the story you had there?
sure. So it's called confirmation bias. I was so happy that they accepted my pitch to include Seven of Nine and Captain Shaw, which is my second favorite captain now, in a story. And so it really had to do with that opening scene we saw in Picard season 3, episode 1, where she instructed Picard and Riker to refer to her as Commander Hansen and not Seven of Nine, because I felt like she had earned that name Seven so long over Voyager that I was like,
Hmm.
what did that conversation look like? Because every time we see Seven of Nine on uh, Voyager, she's not going to say combative, but she's definitely confrontational with Janeway about her individuality. She grows there. She's defensive of it. It's like, what the heck happened to change her? So, really interesting. I want to also I have to applaud David Mack, who released his book Firewall, which is about Seven's time as a Fenris Ranger. I personally have done blogs about where I think Seven should have gone after Voyager, and he nailed it. I called him up or talked to him. I should not call him up, but I communicate with him quite a bit on social media. And I was like, man, I said I could not have done a better book. Like you hit every point that I thought should have been hit about Seven of Nine. So I kind of wanted to create a bridge from that Fenris Ranger Seven of Nine into how the heck is she surviving on a Federation starship with her personality. And that's where confirmation bias came up out of the Star Trek Explorer magazine.
Yeah, that actually led me to I was going to ask about your if you had read David Mack's book before he wrote your story.
No, funny enough, I had already put in confirmation bias and had not, and Firewall had not been released yet. And I had not, and I had before telling him, like, I was like, I don't want to hear anything about it. And so I think his book released and confirmation bias was coming out. So I was reading Firewall with an anticipation, like, oh my God, I hope I don't come into conflict with what he wrote. And
Right.
everything he wrote, I was like, yes, yes, yes. And so it really makes confirmation bias almost like an epilogue to his book and a prologue to Picard's season 3, episode 1.
Right. Yeah, that's a lot of spinning plates, especially with that character. 'Cause
Yeah.
she's got a lot going on.
Well, she's my number one character. So she's is my favorite character. I do, as I anyone who's talked to me before, I do believe she's the next Spock, meaning I think
Hmm.
in another 50 years, people are gonna be like, oh, Seven was the crux of where all of a sudden the Federation had to re-examine itself, had to re-examine the Prime Directive, had to re-examine um its goals. Like I really and because that's Spock. Spock is a rebel character to the Federation. If you really think about what he's doing, trying to create peace with the Romulans. That's
Hmm.
not what the politicians want him to do. But he's like,
Hmm.
I'm breaking away because this is more important. And I really feel Seven of Nine is that character. And what's funny enough is again in Star Trek canon, she's who's she partnering up with and who's she saving? The Romulans. So there's a big story about Romulans going on here between Spock and Seven. She is the next Crossroads. I think she'll be the next greatest character for the next 50 years.
I'd love to see it, especially if Jerry Ryan gets to continue on with the character, because she's carried her through like so many different stages of her life and done so well with her.
Yeah, they're not. I can't see Paramount dropping her as a captain. I can't see
Mm.
her. I do admit that they had to fudge a lot to make it fit, but that can always be explained in future episodes of the new Star Trek Enterprise. Like
Right.
that can always be where people go, oh, okay, okay, okay. It's been done before. So I know they fudged a lot to get her into that captain's chair. But I think any writer worth their weight in gold can figure that out for the fans.
Right. Yeah, and it's a well established bit of Star Trek canon that like if a writer wants someone in the captain's seat, they're gonna end up there somehow. And they're
Exactly.
like, "Oh, you forgot about the obscure rule that like if you're emotionally compromised, that like just some cadet can take over the Enterprise and be the captain, and then his buddy that he was drinking with back on Earth can make him the captain officially.
Yeah,
Why not? Give him the
we all
flagship."
swallow it. Exactly,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly. And it
because it
will,
gets us to the action and adventure and the story.
yeah, it's gonna be good. I can go on for you could make this entire conversation about Seven of Nine, and I could extol why it all makes sense.
Huh. So is this the first thing that you've had officially published?
No, no. So I've been my first thing was self-publishing. So back in 2007 to 2011, I was developing my own IP called Game Masters, which
Mhm.
is not, it was, it's a manga about kids who, Rochambeau, those are the superheroes. Of course, rock, paper, scissors are their superpowers. And all of the villains they came across were based off the schoolyard gags and games we grew up playing. So their first enemies were Red Rover, Hopscotch, Freeze Tag, so double Dutch, patty cakes, so it was kind of like Batman-esque, but manga
Right.
style. And it was something that I had ideated at Comic Con in line at 2007 with my friend. Like, I was like, I want to come up with something that no one's ever done before that's not copying anything else. And I'm big into Rochambeau. And he said, all of a sudden, like, why not Rochambeau? I was like, oh my God. And so from there, I got a lot of support from Comic Con. Back then, there was something called the Ape Convention in San Francisco, which was an independent comic publisher convention. And I aligned myself with the Comic Creator Connection, which still goes on with San Diego Comic Con. And they helped me find the artist. They really walked me through the process and they got me all the way till I'm up there on a panel at Comic Con presenting and having
Ah,
booths at Comic Con, pushing my IP. And so I got a graphic novel done, two Kickstarters, got my graphic novel done, some comics done for it. And so that was my first self-published. And then my first realm into the big IP publishing world was when Jim Johnson invited me to write for Star Trek Adventures because I was had the number one still do number one blog for Star Trek Adventures and Captain's Log, the solo RPG, that launched in 2018. And we had so much traffic coming, and I was writing so much fan fiction along with some other fans that to his own words, he says, you're writing faster than we can get our stuff through approval with CBS. So I think I teased that he slowed me down by giving me a job. And so I'm on my 20th publication with them. I was the lead writer on Captain's Log solo RPG, which has done weirdly phenomenal, better than I thought it ever would. And from there, you start meeting people, and I got the offer to write for Star Trek Explorer magazine.
okay, yeah. The yeah, that solo adventure, I had not I don't think I knew about that till I talked to Kelly Fitzpatrick.
Hmm.
And that just says to me, like the whole concept just says like Twitch, or like, play it yourself and enjoy the thing. But getting on a Twitch stream and doing it yourself and having your audience interact with you, like that speaks to me because like I wasn't too interested in it in like the game. Uh,
Mhm.
Mostly because I don't have anyone to get hyped with in my immediate vicinity. Like
Hmm.
my wife wouldn't say no if I asked her to play the RPG. But like my local Star Trek fan club that I'm a member of, they're mostly more there about the TVs and movies. Like
Mhm.
they're not really there for the gaming or the books or anything like that. Because like I remember going to my first meeting and I was like, I love the Star Trek books, and they're like a couple of them were like, oh, how many are there? And I'm like, whoa, guys, whoa, there's nearly 1,000 of them,
Right, as many as
and
there are TV shows.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And like you can take like any concept from any of the TV shows or movies, and there's probably a follow-up book or like something that like
Comic
directly follows
book.
up on the idea. Oh man, the comics. Yeah, if
Yeah,
you
don't
bring
even
the
get started
comics
on
into it,
comics too.
yeah.
Yeah.
Which that vertical stack right there behind me
Hmm.
is probably about two-thirds of that is shore leave.
Oh wow.
because well, not directly shore leave, because I went to shore leave. I'm in Florida, so I flew
Mhm.
up to Philadelphia and drove from Philadelphia over to Lancaster.
Mm.
So on my way to Lancaster, I stopped at a couple comic shops. While I was in Lancaster, I stopped at, I wanted to say like three or four comic shops. And then on my way back into Philly, I stopped at a few shops like inside Philly itself,
Hmm.
which was a very fun adventure. That was kind of nerve wracking because I was parking in places I wasn't sure if it was even a parking spot or not in downtown Philly. And I'm like, I'm going to be 5 minutes. Surely I'm not going to get towed or like a ticket or anything like that. But I ended up meeting a lot of like really cool comic shop owners and buying some cool Trek books. But I didn't get into the comics until I had like a sizable book collection. And I was like, okay, I'm not really finding too many books around Tallahassee anymore. So my wife was like, well, don't they have comic books? And I was like, yeah,
Yeah. Well, what got me
yeah, they
into
do.
comic book, I mean, I've done a smattering over the day. I'm a big Marvel comic book collector, but what
Hmm.
got me into Star Trek was actually Jackson Lansing and Colin Kelly, who are big RPGers, and they've been slowly and secretly converting their RPG into not only Star Trek Online, but that's where the USS Ross comes from, which ended up in Picard because Thomas Maroney, who's the art director at STO, was one of their RPG buddies. He was also in Clear Skies with Eric Campbell, who does the online live, the Twitch play of Star Trek Adventures. So there, it's all muddled together. But what's funny about Captain's Log was I got when Jim first said, "Hey, what do you think about solo RPG?" I at first was like, "No way, no, no." I played with groups my whole life. I was like, "This is not going to work," right? But then what converted me to give it full steam was Trevor Duvall. I don't know if you've seen Trevor Duvall, Me, Myself, and Die.
Hmm.
He does a solo RPG of 5 parsecs from home. And he's the voice of Emperor Palpatine on Lego Star Wars. He's Rocket Raccoon in the cartoon with the Groot. And he runs this during the pandemic. He was running this amazing YouTube channel and Patreon where he plays 5 parsecs as home solo. And I would watch every episode. I'm like, this is amazing. This guy is so entertaining. So I was like, okay, well, if I can do it like him, if I can get it to the level where someone at home is sitting there going, oh my God, no way. And so as I was playtesting it, I told Jim, I dislike something until I like it, or I hate something until I love it. So I'm going to go at it against it until finally I'm convinced it's a good product. And that's what kind of was the inception of Captain's Log, where it's like I use it all the time now, even for my own story prompting that has nothing to do with RPG. I'll go in there and roll some tables just to get juices flowing.
Hmm.
And if you read the book, it has a lot of storytelling in it because I do a lot of storytelling. I teach storytelling in my day job. And I just wanted people to be able to have a tool that they could use to prompt them to get that stuff onto the page, just to get it out there. So there's a lot of storytelling. Some people have actually said it's more of a journaling book than an RPG.
Okay, I can see it.
And I've heard some argument between those balance of it. And I'm like, hey, it could be both actually, but it
Yeah.
makes me happy if we're creating storytellers too.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you do YouTube or Twitch streams of
Mhm.
various games that you're playing? I
Well,
mean the Star Trek RPG stuff.
yeah, I'm a very one hit wonder in the kind of when I played Marvel RPG Phaser Rip for like 30 years. So I'm like die hard. When I get into something, I'm committed, right? So then
Right.
STA is the big time RPG that I've next committed to. So we have a weekly podcast that I do with Jim Johnson, who's the project manager at Modifius, the Star Trek line, and we do something called Continuing Conversations every week. Amazing people come on the show. We always crack up at who comes on the show, like and who accepts our invitations. It's all basically about Star Trek adventures and storytelling. So that's available on most podcast services, be it Spotify, Apple, whatever, plus YouTube. So continuing conversations. So that's our weekly. And what we sometimes do is demonstration of the games. So myself
Hmm.
and Jim will do collaborative solo RPGing together. And this is recording in August. We just did a 3-part series with some great writers playing Star Trek, demonstrating Star Trek second edition. Some of the basic mechanics we've been actually playing so people can see it. So not only do we talk about storytelling and invite a lot of amazing guests onto the show, but we also do some demonstration playing.
Yeah, that's very important for people like me that don't have the RPG background and don't understand the fundamentals. and seeing people that actually understand it just go through the book and say, here's how you do it, here's what the book means,
Yeah.
here's what you need to do just to get your feet off the ground.
Yeah.
Because what's the starting point, right? You got these quick start guides, which
Hmm.
I got one of those from Kelly Fitzpatrick at
Oh,
Shore Leave. She had a whole stack of them that Jim sent
good.
her for the show, and I was like, can I get one of those? She's
Yeah,
like, yeah, sure, why not?
I'm like that. I'm a visual kinesthetic
Mhm.
learner, so I'm less likely to read it and get it. I have to get into it and play it, and then after that, when I read it, got it. I'm cool. So I understand that when I run games sometimes at conventions and also at the local game shop here in Berkeley, California, called Games of Berkeley. They've been around for 40 years. But I build for every type of learner, including I love playing with autistic players. I've done that several times. And if you can build it so that the visual people and all the different forms of communication can get it their first time out and they pick up that quick start guide and then go and start their own game or find a group, that's a success to me. So I understand you. And that's why we do a lot of video tutorials, is because people need to hear it first, click, and then they grab the book and they got it.
Mhm.
Yeah, totally agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely. What's your involvement with man, I'm trying to remember the URL. It's like a continuing missions, continuing,
Continuing missions, yeah. So
right?
I'm
Is that yours?
yeah, I founded it with Tony Pye and Colin Wilson. So that's the one that's the number one fan site for. I send the stats over to Modifius and Jim all the time to prove it. But we definitely have the biggest traffic for the game, for Star Trek Adventures and Captain's Log. So I do that, and then Tony Pye is another Star Trek Adventures freelance writer. He's also an award-winning writer. And Colin Wilson did. I had originally met Colin Wilson working on something called Marvel's Plot Points with Mark Meredith, which was based off of the Marvel game, uh, the Margaret Weiss game. So we had first started blogging there, and then in 2018, when Star Trek Adventures was launched, they're like, "Hey, I'm Mark Meredith is like, I'm going to open up a little site for Star Trek Adventures just in case anyone wants to play it." So we got into the play testing, and we just started blogging the heck out of it every day, a post. And that's how, again, Jim noticed me, was because I was constantly posting on there, not only character stats from TV shows and odds and ends, but I was actually starting to post full modules. So he saw
Hmm.
my writing style right there, then and there. People were playing our modules too. And so that's when he invited me to pitch for
Yeah,
Modifius.
that's an easy invite after you see like the work has already been done. And you're like, okay, well, we know what he can do, and how good the site is. Because I've actually just incidentally been following your site for years at this point. So
Cool.
it's nice to meet the people behind something like that. Um,
Awesome. That makes me
yeah,
happy.
I've
And
been.
again, we invite people, and I want to let people know we invite people to dump their fan stuff on there too, because there's nothing worse than the only people knowing about someone's story is you and your few players. We
Mhm.
invite people, put it out there. That way you don't have to worry about carrying a floppy. Sorry, I'm going to say age myself, a floppy disk around with your stories or keeping it
Right.
on a Dropbox somewhere. You could store it on continuing missions. You'll enjoy it. You'll always have it there to go search, and everyone can see it. So we really want to immortalize people's table games. We're not making money off it. We make no profit off the site. It's purely just a fan storage fiction base for
Hmm.
people.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So what's next for you then? You got the story coming out. You've got your podcast. You got a movie or a book that you're about to release.
I have a day job, so that takes up a lot of my time. I have a really nice day job, and in it, I get to do a lot of writing. It's not sci-fi writing, but it's still a lot of. I work for a not-for-profit affordable housing developer here in California, so we do a lot of writings for executives, a lot of events and stuff like that. So I do have a day job. So, but when it comes to this Star Trek, what I've noticed is the community is so accepting
Hmm.
that like Jim Johnson is opening doors. Dayton Ward, who's a huge Star Trek novelist and a consultant on the Star Trek TV shows, is once they know you're working and you're putting the work out there and you're networking, it's just an introduction sometimes. And then sometimes I'll just hear from somebody like, "Hey, do you want to do this?" Yes. I go in drooling. So
Right.
Um, I can't say that I'm working full time actively searching for stuff to do. I'm taking the work as it comes in right now. It's hard to make a living as a writer. I mean, it's
Hmm.
not a high paid profession. I'd love to be a Bill Watterson, who wouldn't? But, but uh, it's something that as I get closer to retirement, I would love to have as a supplemental income. But
Hmm.
I really do it for fun and passion. I write every day, whether or not I was getting paid or not. For the last 30 something years, I've written every day. So it's kind of my art form. But being able to get stuff with my name on is definitely like a dream come true. Every time I get something, I'm always like, I cry because I'm like, I never thought I was going to get it. Every time I get something, it's something like even writing with Jim on the RPGs, I'm like, this is it. This is why I did all the writing. This is where I wanted to get. And I was good. I was satisfied. And then all of a sudden, I get an opportunity another book or Star Trek Explorer magazine. I'm like, that's it. I'm done. And then something else comes along. So I'm very satisfied and content. I'm more about just like worshiping the fans because
Hmm.
we keep the IPs going, make sure the fans feel good. That's my number one concern. I feel blessed either way, even if this is my last job.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Everyone that I've interviewed or talked to or met that's had anything official to do with the franchise has been very friendly, very open, very
Mhm.
just like accepting of like everything that you could possibly do with them. Um, so you're not actively looking for more books, but obviously,
I mean,
if
I pitch
yeah,
actively.
right,
Yeah,
yeah,
I pitch if I see, and I am actually going to be writing on. I have a friend, Al Spader, who is also a freelance writer for Star Trek Adventures. He's done some other stuff, but he created his own IP called Sentience, which is available on Drive Through RPG. It's amazing. It's D20, so he was able to use the open license that they give you to use their system. Um, and so I'm going to be doing some work with him in the future. So I'm open to stuff. I am particular. I have to say that I have a rule
hmm,
when I write that it has to be something my nieces and nephews can digest and something that makes you feel good at the end. The
right,
reason I say that is because 99% of the writing out there, it's so easy to fall back on vulgarity, sex, and violence in order to get people to buy. And I challenge myself each time. I want to be the 1%. I want to be the person that I know when people picked up my story, it was because it was a good story, not because I used the fallbacks. And that's just my personal value system. So there would be stuff I reject in writing
hmm,
too, and I have. So I do have that personal commitment, which is definitely going to cut me off from doing a lot of stuff. And I don't care because in the end, I want a body of work that's equal to Calvin and Hobbes. I just want a book that everyone can pick up and
right,
make happy. You read it, you
yeah,
feel good. Like when
yeah.
we watch Star Trek, every episode you finish, you feel like I can go to sleep now. I just love
Yeah,
that kind of writing.
that feels very much like something that I just saw on TikTok with LeVar Burton, who
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
it was a clip from a movie that he was in about
Mhm.
a basketball team that
Mm,
the owner got into all sorts of problems for like his treating players incorrectly.
yeah.
But there was a point that he was playing himself. LeVar Burton was playing himself in this thing, and he said that he narrated that story that was "Go to F to Sleep."
Hmm.
It was the kids' novel that was like, just go to sleep. Would you please just go the F to sleep? And he said that it hurt him financially to do that book because he had built this like
Yes.
this like persona of Mr. Rogers, Bob
Yeah.
Ross, like that kind of stuff, and you're like, why is LeVar Burton
Yeah, he's a
cursing
safe
on the
space.
internet, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
so
What a privilege. And I mean, again, I love his work. I listen to
yes,
his stories too. He has his own podcast about
hmm,
stories. And again, you know that when you're listening to it, you're going to get a good story. You don't have to feel like I can have my nieces and nephews with me in the room and family
right,
members, and we're just going to get a good story. Like that's a rare treasure, I think, nowadays. And I want to. I'm not saying that won't watch Aliens or something. Like sure, I
right.
don't. I know good. I know there's good stories outside of that. I've just made a personal choice about what kind of work I'll accept.
Right, and I think that Aliens is a good one because that's the one that went in my mind went to. It's like, well, obviously you're not going to be writing about xenomorphs or stuff like that, but that's also a safe space in that you know what to expect, right? You're
See,
not going
yeah,
to walking in and getting a love story in the middle of your xenomorph films,
Exactly.
you're going to be getting chest bursting and acid blood and robots going crazy.
See, and I could write, the
Whereas,
thing is, I could write an alien story. I could easily, if they said, "Hey, do you want to write?" I could totally write that because I
mhm,
don't view aliens as anything but like a angry hornet's nest. Don't
right,
step in it. Don't step in it. So I could write a story about that happen. So again, there's boundaries among this. It's not. It doesn't have to be glorifying
right.
violence in
And of
order to
course,
have a good
now
story.
Trek has their own version of the Xenos with
Exactly.
the Gorns. So
Right.
uh, not necessarily like the easiest way to go out,
Exactly.
but
Ugh.
yeah, yeah. But
Heebie-jeebies.
I think that's actually where Strange New Worlds left off, isn't it? With the Gorn, or did
Yes.
they leave off on something else? So that
Well,
I
and
need to
there
go back and rewatch them.
there's something about really good horror, which is
Mhm.
called, which Jim Johnson introduced me to the term, and I loved it. Fade to black. Like
Mhm.
when you fade the black horror and you don't actually see the blood, but your own mind has to figure
Yeah.
it out. That's the I think about the Batman movie, Dark Knight. People don't realize it, but not once in that movie did you see Joker kill anyone and have a bloody thing.
Hmm.
I tell them, go back and watch it. It's not like, even when, I don't know if you remember the scene where he took the thing and stood up the pencil. That was all
Right.
visual, but they never showed what he actually did. The
Right.
mind, or even when he held up the knife to people, he never cut anyone.
Right.
It was just the sheer terror. And I was like, that was amazing horror
Yeah.
writing. You don't need to
Yeah.
show, the mind will fill it in.
Yeah, the scariest movie of my childhood was the original The Thing, the
Oh,
black and white
yes.
version,
Oh, my God.
because like they're
Favorite.
stuck in this Antarctic base and there's
Yes.
something around the base walking around and they never show it like until it like comes through the door at one point, and then it's just like this
Yes.
giant like carrot man, and you're like, oh well, that's not as scary as like something grabbing them from like an air duct or a door, and you're like, where'd he go? I don't know.
Yeah,
No,
they ruined
run.
it by showing it. Look at Blair
Exactly.
Witch. Blair
Yeah.
Witch was purely mind games, right? So that's my
Right.
point. So you could still have horror. You don't need to
Hmm.
have blood and guts and stuff. I actually think that ruins it for really good horror stories.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, so do you have any more modules coming out that are going to be released officially through Modifius that you can
But
announce, that you can talk about?
only because April Hill, who's the social media specialist for Modifius, announced it at Gen Con, can I
Mhm.
at least talk that there is something coming out with some stories that I've worked on, some uh it's a starter pack. She said starter pack, so I can say starter pack. So there's a starter pack, and definitely I'll at least say that myself and Merrick Moyer, who is another big RPGer. He does a lot with
Mhm.
Call of Cthulhu, and Al Spader. So we wrote a kick butt story for the starter pack, and playing with I won't announce what species yet, but the species we were all dying to get down and dirty with and really
Mhm.
expand beyond what Trek has done with them. So I'm really excited about that. One of the cool things Jim let us do is that for each of our stories, he let us be the art directors on
Mm.
instructing the graphic designers on what art we wanted to supplement our own stories. I've
Oh,
never done
cool.
that before. So, and I'm telling you, when they brought out the art pieces I designed, one of them especially, I almost came to, I was like it nailed it. I was like, oh my God, like to see the power of a graphic artist to take your conceptual design and then you give them some pictures and some reference, and for them to translate that onto oil and then into like Photoshop. That just blows my mind. So I'm really excited about that. That's coming out soon. And then believe me, there is some other stuff that's coming out that fans have been begging for, that
Right.
if Jim didn't tell you about it, I can't tell you about it.
Right.
But
I just
people are going to be
imagine
thrilled.
you like watching everyone's various streams and social posts with like a little notebook and like talking about like, oh, she said this. I can talk about this now. Or they
Yes.
said this and we can talk about this.
Yeah,
Or
I
well,
wait
it
till
slipped, so it's
yes.
out.
Once Modifius says it, then I can talk about it all day. I definitely have a wish list, which I can talk. I talk about my wish list all day long because they
Oh,
can't do anything about
yeah,
that.
please do.
And
Yeah.
it's much of it has come true. But one of my biggest wish lists is, we have the license to Prodigy, or Modifius has the license to Prodigy, and I've been begging Jim to do a Star Trek Adventures for Children.
Hmm.
based off of Prodigy. And then Dr. Erin McDonald, I don't know if you've met her yet. She's the science advisor for Star Trek Adventures. She's come on our podcast a couple times. And I don't know if you notice how they designed Prodigy, that each episode introduces you to another Trek trope or concept, be it transporters or time travel or warp travel or holodecks. Each episode was purposely designed. And then
Okay.
just so that if a kid's watching it for the first time, they start learning all of those different Star Trek tropes. So my suggestion, and what I really want Modiphius to do, is design a Star Trek Adventures based off Prodigy, where each mission the kids play teaches them a Star Trek trope. So that then when they start watching the TV shows, they know what a deflector dish does. They know what the warp engine does. They know what the phasers do. And I just think that the way they constructed Prodigy was so perfect for kid learning that I would love to see that emulated in the modules.
Yeah, that's very clever on both parts. I don't think I picked up on that in the TV show itself, and
Yeah.
I've not seen any RPGs that like start with a like just a concept learning experience. Most
Right.
of them are more for the adventure than the learning.
Yeah, about 4 to 5 episodes in of the first season of Prodigy, I caught it and I talked to Erin. I think she came on our show and I asked her straight up about it. And she was like,
Hmm.
good catch. And sure enough, I mean, to me, like a kid now understands how butterfly effect or all the different effects of time travel work.
Hmm.
Like kids after watching it understand how you could affect some. Yeah, I just thought it was brilliant. The time travel episode, especially. But again, go
Right.
back and watch it and touch on it, and you'll see each one covers one thing, whether it's tricorders or universal translator was very early on about how it works. And I love that the
Hmm.
kids are discovering. Oh, they had one about just the prime directive. So it really a great teaching tool, that show.
Yeah, that one of the panels that I went to during shore leave was like how to watch Star Trek, and uh, I think that's the answer then is to start with Prodigy if they're like introducing these concepts because like
Yeah.
it's a fairly insurmountable task to be just start watching Star Trek. Like, do you start with the show from the 60s? Or do you start with the show from the 90s? Or do you start with what show do you introduce people with? And like I know personally that D Space Nine is where like I truly love like learn to love the franchise. But
Hmm.
Next Generation, of course, was the original like Space Daddy with Jean-Luc Picard, where like he was always there for his crew,
Hmm.
much like um, Anson Mount's Christopher Pike with Strange New Worlds, where people can do bad things underneath him, like they can make mistakes, but he's always there to like support them, that kind of thing. But uh, Prodigy, with its low episode count, at least, feels like
Yeah.
if it's introducing concepts in that way, you can say, here's 30 hours of your life that you give up to watch this show, but you'll understand all the memes from Trek.
Exactly. And that's the point. That's what's so good about it. I mean, if it's somebody who was anti-cartoon, I'm probably gonna, as I have with my friends, have them start a Voyager, which has addicted a lot of people because they got
Hmm.
the concepts through that too. And it's nice seeing a woman captain. You got rid of some of that early sexism. Like I had my 8-year-old nephew, he wanted to watch the original series. Like, I want to watch the original series. He had never seen it before. And he called it out within the first few episodes. He's like, why is Kirk touching women like that? I'm like,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
And so
It
that was interesting.
Yeah, it's good as a study of like progression, right? Because like at the time it was a very progressive show. Like they had minorities on the bridge, they had
Right.
minorities as like main characters, like they had women like in actual positions of authority, like more so in the unaired pilot, but
There's
they
a lot of
changed it now.
manhandling
But
There's a
yeah,
lot of
yeah,
manhandling going. He was like, look
right.
how hard he's holding her arm.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
cracking up. I was like, you're right.
But then, just 20 years later in the 90s, they're like, "Whoa, hey, we changed a whole lot from there." And
Yeah.
then like you're like, "Yeah, but you're also got like your eye candy," which, I love Seven of Nine, but looking back at like her cat suits, you're like,
Yeah.
did they have
Exactly.
to be that skin tight that like,
Right.
that's like, but
Yeah, there was a
I enjoy it,
progression.
but at the same time, like her stuff as a Fenris Ranger, like she looked pretty cool, like in her,
I
swashbuckling
love it.
outfit.
I love that. Yeah, that's her best. That's her
Yeah.
best for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the best shot that I've seen of her though was after it was on Picard season 3 when someone's like walking away from her. She's like in a hallway watching them walk away. She like pops her hip out and she's just like, "Arr," and I'm like, okay, like her in a regular uniform, like it does it for me. Like
Yeah,
I'd,
exactly.
I'd like to
She's
see
great.
more of her. What were they were calling it like Star Trek Legacies or something like that. Uh, I'd love to see that happen. So whoever the new owners of Paramount end up being,
Well, there's a
because
lot we haven't seen. You know, if you think about season 6 Voyager, I think it was, um, where the Borg Queen, or either 7, someone made the statement that she had assimilated tens of thousands of species, 10,000
mhm,
species. And that's where I think the show fell flat for me, where, wait a second, every single episode, she should be pulling out a skill, talent, or bit of knowledge that shows that she's this immense intellect containing, because they
mhm,
called her in Voyager, they said, you're probably the smartest human alive. Yeah, definitely. She's definitely the smartest human alive because she's pulling from 10,000 species, including species that probably had civilizations better than the Prime Directive that
mhm,
still failed to the Borg. They probably had better ethics, right? And so I just see that if I was writing her comic book or her novel or writing her in Star Trek, every single show I'd be like, okay, we got to MacGyver her. We got to every make sure that every single story she gets one thing. We're like, damn, she don't quit. She always like, even if it's Tsukatsu, Tsunkatsu, the martial arts or something, everyone should be like, okay, she is awesome, and we have a great explanation canon why she's so awesome.
right. So it's
And
kind of like Star
yeah,
Trek Chuck,
heck yeah,
where she's got like
exactly.
the brain download.
Yeah, to me, it's like that's 7 of 9, where you should be like, she only can be against the Federation because she's actually seen civilizations that are better than the Federation.
Hmm.
And she was part of destroying them. And now
Hmm.
she wants to rebuild them and kind of bring back their legacy. Oh, wow, you just struck on something there. I
Yeah.
never hit me before. Bring back their legacy of these civilizations by bringing back those cultures and their best achievements. Oh my God, that would resonate with modern society so well.
Mm.
Oh wow, you just Adam, you just inspired
All
it.
right. So you got to do a pitch to Paramount now. That's your pitch. Talk to the showrunner for Star Trek Picard. See if you can get him to
Oh
back you on it.
wow. Oh wow. No, that really clicked all of it. I love when
Yeah.
I love workshopping writer workshops like this.
Yeah. See, I'll take a 1% residual on
Okay,
that.
okay, all right. I'll remember that. But that's why it should be called Legacy. That's a great point.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and too, they had the two kids on there too, right? They
Yep.
had LaForge's kid
LaForge's
and
kids,
Picard's kid.
Picard's kid. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, which I
Mm.
actually got to stand next to. I didn't talk to him because he was like being shuffled between areas, but the gentleman that plays the Captain Shaw,
Oh yeah, Liam Shaw.
Liam Shaw.
No, sorry, his
No,
real
no,
name.
that's
Sorry,
no that.
sorry. Give me
Well,
a second. Yeah, you're
what's the
killing me.
character's name?
Oh,
It's
oh,
Tony
the
something,
character.
isn't it?
No, no, no. Captain Liam Shaw is the character.
Okay, who's the
Hold
actor?
on.
Because I stood next to him.
Which is really sad because I've actually had him do a cameo. So hold on a
Ah,
second. Liam Shaw, Star Trek. But now that put me under pressure, I have to let's see.
Shaston.
Todd Stashwick. Thank you.
Stashwick. Ah,
Todd
geez. Okay,
Stashwick.
right.
Yes.
Yes. Need to
Yeah.
turn on our Greek geek cards.
Yeah. But see, the thing is too, if you really want to go legacy too, I think the one mistake that they did at the end of Picard season 3 was they had Q come back. John, what's his name?
Yeah, John Delancey.
John
Yeah,
Delancey. They
who I've
should
got
not.
a photo with him right there.
Oh,
Me and
that's
my
so
wife.
cool. They
Yeah,
shouldn't have done that. They actually should have had Q Jr., the actor who plays Q Jr., which is his son. That
yeah,
should have been the Q that came back. They
yeah.
should have let that Q die. And I think that if you really wanted a legacy character, they should have brought back Q Jr. to
Well, they
close
still
out that
have the
scene.
future. They have plenty of time to figure all that out.
Yeah.
I will say that if you're a fan of Q Jr., IDW just did the Sons of Trek
Yeah. I have it on my
series. That
read list.
oh man, it was so much better than I thought it was going to be
Okay.
because There's what do you call it, like when the episode just like resets everything at the end of it, like Voyager got accused of that, where they're like, it's supposed to be more like,
Hmm.
their journey home, but yeah, at the end of every episode they kind of reset everything.
Right. Yeah.
um and comic books do that a lot,
Yeah.
where they're like, oh, here's this like crazy adventure that everyone's going on and there are no stakes whatsoever.
Right.
Well, they do it in a way that there are stakes,
Good.
and the story matters,
Okay.
uh, and you get to see a lot of interesting concepts put out on page. So I'd suggest reading it sooner than later, only because I'm such a huge fan of it.
Okay,
Um,
I have it on my queue, so
yeah,
I have a big stack of stuff, and I try to keep up with Jackson and Colin, but they pump out so much
yeah,
goodness.
that's the problem with these prolific authors, that they're putting out 2 or 3 issues of stuff every week
I
or every
know.
month,
Have you had
and
them on
then
yet? They're like great people to interview, by the way.
I have not. I've
Oh,
actually only interviewed book authors, and then
mm,
I've started to move into Modifius people. And
okay,
when I was at shore leave, I started talking to Adina. Oh, I can't remember her last name now. But I'm gonna have her on in just a
okay,
couple days.
nice,
She was fantastic. She's got a story coming in an soon to be released issue of Explorer,
sweet,
and then eventually collected. But yeah, I'm collecting like all the authors right now
good.
that have done books, and then once I know enough people to get me in contact with all of those people, I'll just start opening the Rolodex and be like, all right, let's talk to the comic book people.
Well,
Because
I
yeah, I
think,
want to talk to them. I want to talk to
yeah,
Heather Antos. I want to talk
she's
to,
cool. Yeah,
yeah, like I've built like a wish list, and it is long and wide. So
yeah.
like plenty of people.
Jody Hauser's another
Mhm.
amazing talent that's taken over the industry, and it's important. I thank you, Adam, for what you're doing too, because I know it matters so much to the right, and I know it matters to me that somebody may listen to this
Mhm.
and maybe go pick up one item that we've produced or something. And so when you do that, one, two, three, four, five, 10 people see it. It just really helps out. So I really appreciate. I know I do a podcast. I don't get paid for the podcast we do. It's
Mhm.
purely a passion project, but it. I love promoting people, and it's amazing that years later like it'll come around some way, which is really
Right.
weird. So
Yeah.
I think I
Yeah,
really
that is
appreciate people
true.
like you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, and it's like we said at the top of this, the everyone is just like so excited to talk about the franchise and to talk about like what they're doing, because Star Trek's the entry, right? Like we all know that we love Star Trek. What else do we like that like could be in common as well?
Hmm.
Because I've found some of my favorite authors by just like having conversations like this, where it turns out that they also do like hardcore military science fiction with realistic science. Like
Right.
that's where my heart lies outside of Star Trek.
Oh, wow.
And uh, I found them because do you know who John Scalzi is?
Mm.
The author. He did a novel called Old Man's War,
Okay.
where the hook was that Earth was quarantined by other humans that were living on like colony planets, and they were using the elderly population of Earth, transplanting their brains into like android robot bodies, and then using them to fight other aliens out in the universe. Like it's such a good book. He did like 5 or 6 other books in the series, but on his website he does he just like gives the mic to other authors, and they come in, they say, here's what I'm working on, here's what I'm doing. Well, I
See?
found
That's
Marco
great.
Cluse, who
Hmm.
does these military science fiction series. That one of them is about when a bunch of aliens come to Earth to colonize or terraform our planet,
Hmm.
and they're like 300-foot like elephant slash giraffe slash gorillas,
Hmm.
and they just like don't even notice us, and like you have to like walk around with tactical nukes in your hand in order to even like to scratch their paint. So
Oh,
it's
wow.
like,
That's like so reading Rainbow. The fact that
right,
he lets people come on the show and talk. That remember that's LeVar
yeah,
Burton did. He
uh-huh,
he he created best-selling authors just by letting the kids talk about what books they like the
right,
most.
yeah, exactly. And I
Yeah.
love the just the exploration of it, because sometimes you're not going to get something that you like.
Right.
I've read a number of books and I'm just like, this really wasn't for me, which
Hmm.
it happens in Trek too, where I'm just like, I just like, I see what they're going for here, but it's just not for me. But sometimes what doesn't work for me will mutate just a little bit, and turn into Strange New Worlds. And I'll be like, well, this is the best thing since sliced bread. So like,
Right. Well, I
thank
have a
you for all the
15.
stuff that, yeah.
Yeah, me and my wife, we have a 15-minute rule on everything. So if I
Hmm.
pick up a book and I start reading it, and within the first 15 minutes, it really doesn't grab me, I put it aside. TV shows, like, you know how you have those nights where you sit and you're like, okay, what are we going to watch? What we do is we just go ahead and hit play on the first thing we see and we give it
Hmm.
15 minutes. We do that 4 times. And if we can't find something in 4 times, we turn it off and we have a TV-less night. That's kind of our rule how we play, and we've discovered such amazing treasures that way. And even like reading Rainbow Style, Derek Tyler Attico is the first person, and I know, I'm up there in years. He is the first person who dropped the name Octavia Butler to me. I had never
Oh,
heard of Octavia Butler before.
yeah,
And
that's an adventure once you get into,
oh, I
yeah.
could, so I would go ahead and picked up the Parable of the Sowers, Parable of Reaper. I was like, how did I miss this? So I love when people introduce me to new. I don't know everybody. I'm not one of those people who reads claims to know everything. But if I'll give anything 15 minutes, and if it has my
Hmm.
attention, I love it.
Yeah, have you read the autobiography of Benjamin Sisko yet?
Oh yes, twice. I read it,
Okay, yeah,
literally read
well,
it twice.
I think he named a ship after Butler
Yeah,
in that.
exactly. Yeah.
Like that book was on my Kindle version was the most highlighted book that I've gotten in a while.
Nice.
Like because I do book clubs with the Project Management Institute here in town, and
Okay.
those you want to like make your marks for those, and those books are usually my most marked up ones. But this one, I'm like, oh, that captain is a reference to something. That
Yes.
name has got to be a reference to something. I got to do research for it. And I actually had to come up with a system to like, yellow is like that's just interesting. Red is I'm not sure what that means, or blue is like I've got to do additional research. And like I had to write down like what the categories for the colors were for the Kindle highlights because
Yeah.
it's just like
We're
how thick
supposed to
it
have
was
him.
with.
We're supposed to have him back because we had him early on release, and I didn't
Hmm.
want him to give Easter eggs yet because there were so many Easter eggs in that book and references that we said, okay, Derek, we're going to give you some time, let the book get out there. But I want to have a whole Easter egg episode going
Yeah.
chapter through chapter just because of what you said.
Yeah, I would love to watch that. So when you do
Mhm.
that, shoot me a line and
I
I'll be
will.
sure to feature it on my own site, and then selfishly I'll watch it myself because
Hmm.
like he's talked about he did two panels at Shore Leave that were directly about Cisco. One of them was the Cisco Day, which was an actual holiday on Deep Space Nine, and then the other one was specifically about his book. And both of them, he was just like, and we talked about this and we talked about that and we talked, and I'm like, okay, I need to start taking notes here because I missed half of those. And I
It's a
love,
well-researched book.
yeah, I
Yeah.
love stuff like that because that ties into like what Lower Decks does, where like you have to like pause it every now and then and be like, okay, they just said 15 jokes and I only caught about three of them. Like let me go back through and try to get them. And then you don't have to do that to get joy out of the
Right.
show, but I like to do that because it's great to go through all of it and be like, yes, I got all the references. And
Well, the
then
thing
you go
about
on
lower
Reddit
decks
or
is not even,
something,
yeah, and lower decks is not about what they say, it's what's in the background.
right?
Like you actually have
That
to
too,
pause. Like when I see objects, I pause. I'm like, okay, what is that? And I try to
right?
figure it out.
Yeah, exactly.
I love show.
Um,
Yeah, yeah. Derek's book is definitely equal to that.
yeah. It's an exciting time right now in the Trek book sector because there's just like so many cool, unique things coming out.
It is. It's and it's interesting. I think people are tired of the media and tired of being depressed and tired of being sad after watching the news or TV
Hmm.
shows. Once people start the Star Trek, I tell for mental health, once people start down the path of Star Trek, it's hard to give it up. I mean, it's ASMR to me. Like I put it on at night in the background, even if I'm cleaning the kitchen, just to
Hmm.
hear the
Right.
just because it relaxes me and I know the end of the show I'm going to feel good. And I think a lot of humans who watch media don't know that feeling.
Hmm.
I really think I encourage people just get into the feeling of it. Just chill out and watch a good stage play with this sci-fi dressing. Just chill out and watch what it does to you. And I'm always happy to introduce people to Star Trek just for that reason.
Yeah. All right. Well, I've kept you for an hour now. Was there anything that you wanted to talk about or promote before I let you go for the night?
I mean, I want to encourage people to try Star Trek Adventures RPG.
Hmm.
people are afraid to be a game master oftentimes, but the new Quick Start 2E that came out, I'm hearing a lot of good reviews that people found it very easy. It's very
Mhm.
simple, the mechanics on it, and just get into the narrative play of it. So if you're not satisfied and you don't feel there's enough Star Trek out there, you can actually have your own Star Trek every week in your own house. And so I really encourage people if you like karaoke, if you like improv, you have friends who don't mind goofing around and having some fun. You want your kids to maybe be introduced to some clean entertainment. This is a great RPG to start with. So I just encourage people to do it. It's changed. I played RPG since I've been, 15 years old, and I would not be a writer nowadays if I did not. So it's a very liberating exercise. That's what I encourage people to do.
Well, it's on my checklist. So I think I'll probably my first experience is going to be the solo stuff.
Okay.
And then once my wife gets jealous about how much fun I'm having, maybe I'll bring her in.
Hey, maybe I've done it before. Maybe one day I'll run a Zoom game for you and her and pick a couple other friends and I'll get you
Yeah.
launched into your game. I do that sometimes for people. So uh, I wouldn't mind doing that.
All right, that's very cool, man. It was a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you very much for talking to me.
All right. Thanks for having me on, Adam.
All right, man. Have a good day.
Bye bye.